Hey everybody, it is Thursday, September 12th. You're listening to the Mo.news podcast. I'm Moshe back here in New York.
Welcome back, Moshe. I am Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. And we continue to watch the fallout here from the debate watched by tens of millions of Americans on Tuesday night. On this September 12th, Jill, which I just looked up, is National Chocolate Milkshake Day. So treat yourself.
My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard. I used to love a chocolate milkshake. I love chocolate ice cream, but in my old age, I've started to like vanilla milkshakes.
Oh, interesting take on this National Chocolate Milkshake Day.
I'll still take a chocolate milkshake.
Yeah. I'm not. So look it up. I bet you there's a deal out there for those who celebrate. You know, the expression, da-da-da is being celebrated today. For those who celebrate Chocolate Milkshake Day, enjoy it. Jill, we're recording this at a slightly earlier time today than last night's 1 a.m. recording. But I think we're still dealing with a bit of the political hangover, so to speak.
I think we're at the age where it's like, even if you don't drink and have an actual hangover, just staying up late gives you that feeling. Like I was dragging all day and I'm like, I feel like I'm hungover or something.
Totally. Listen, I think that like we won't recover till Monday. That's the deal.
Oh, that's where we are in life. Okay, let's get to the headlines here. We'll dive into the aftermath and the impact of the big debate. Besides for Moshe and I just dragging. The ratings, how many people watched Trump versus Harris? Who do they think won? Plus, will we get a debate round 2? To the weather, Hurricane Francine makes landfall in Louisiana with storm surge, high winds, and flooding rain. To the economy, inflation continues to cool, except in one big area. We'll tell you which one. Speaking of inflation, Amazon's coming out with a new lineup of what they're calling no frills groceries.
Jill, are you excited?
I am, Moshe, but if it's anything like shopping at Whole Foods and then giving your Amazon Prime thing and realizing you got 25 cents off, then no, I'm not excited. So I'm curious if it's real and if it's actual savings, then I'm all in. To the Middle East, Israel offers Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar safe exit from Gaza in exchange for the hostages and an end to the war. And the FDA is investigating lead, arsenic, and other heavy metals in tampons. Plus, Moshe is on this day in history.
We take you to one of the more famous weddings in American history on this day, 1953. Your clue? It was in Newport, Rhode Island, and had 1,200 attendees.
Okay, it is the day after the debate, and it is looking like Tuesday's face-off between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Trump could be their only debate before the November election. On Wednesday, Trump writing on his Truth Social platform that he will not debate Kamala Harris again. He writes, "When a fighter gets beaten or knocked out, they get up and scream, 'I demand a rematch.' Well, it's no different with the debate. She was beaten badly. Every poll has us winning. So why would I do a rematch?" I should note later in the day, he told reporters he is still thinking about it and would possibly do the NBC debate and possibly the debate on Fox as well.
We're back to the debate over the debate. One of the traditions, well, at least a 2024 tradition, as we've been watching it the past couple of months, that NBC debate scheduled for later this month, Fox debate. It's unclear whether that would happen. He wants one. She does not want to do one on Fox. Right now, the only debate we know is scheduled is for October 1st on CBS in New York City, and that is a VP debate between Tim Walz and J.D. Vance.
Most several focus groups, a Snap poll, most analysts, including many Republican political advisors, all feel that Harris won the debate, I should note.
Yeah, despite what Trump has been saying, even his allies are admitting he didn't do so well. People who are very close to him, RFK Jr., who just endorsed him, went on Fox News in his role as a Trump ally and advocate. And he even said, this is RFK Jr. Yesterday, Vice President Harris clearly won the debate in terms of her delivery, polish, organization, and preparation, though he did note, Kennedy did add, Trump won on substance for what it's worth.
Early numbers show at least 58 million Americans watched the debate live on TV across 8 major networks. So that's about 25% more than watched the Trump-Biden debate earlier this year. And that does not even count YouTube and other social media platforms, as well as the hundreds of millions of views that social media clips are getting even as we record this. So we'll get firm numbers in the next couple of days. It is also looking like nearly half of the TV sets in the key swing state of Pennsylvania were dialed into the debate. Pittsburgh and Philadelphia were the 2 highest rated markets in the country for the debate. And in an indication of how each side genuinely thinks that they did, the Harris campaign posted the entire debate, a video of nearly 2 hours, and pinned it on social media with the caption, "Our newest TV ad just dropped." And on the Trump side, conservatives attacking the moderator. ABC's David Muir and Lindsay Davis for fact-checking Trump in real time and asking follow-up questions during the debate, and not being as critical of Harris and following up with her on any of her misstatements. So that was a different decision than CNN, which did not fact check Trump or then candidate Joe Biden in the last debate. Senator Lindsey Graham writing on X, the moderators might as well have been on the DNC payroll. Former Fox host Megyn Kelly calling the moderators a disgraceful failure and said that this was one of the most biased and unfair debates she's ever seen. She said, "Shame on you, ABC."
Yeah. So that's a bit of what you're hearing from the right, even as they admit that Trump did not perform up to their expectations. At the same time, we should note that it wasn't like the two had equal performances in terms of the amount of mistruths they had. If you actually do a count, multiple organizations, including conservative ones, have done count. You have more than 24, nearly 36 Trump misstatements, about a handful for Harris there, more traditional political exaggeration. So obviously with an asymmetrical lying or misstatements, there's asymmetrical fact-checking, but we should still note 0 were done by ABC anchors for Kamala Harris. And more significantly than the whole fact-checking thing is just the lack of follow-up there, especially on issues she was vulnerable on that she did not answer questions on. You know, we talked yesterday, Jill, about, and a lot of people have played this clip where, you know, she was talking to him about his rallies, right? That was a question about immigration and why the Biden administration hasn't done much about the crisis for the first 3 years of their time in office. She says a little bit on it and then moves to his, you know, rallies, knowing that that would bait him into just going off about his rally crowds, etc. Well, you know, you could think that the ABC anchors are like, wait, hold on there, Kamala Harris. Like, we asked you a question about immigration. You're talking about Trump rallies. Let's follow up on that. And I think that's the frustration here. At the same time, when you're losing, you know, this is a sports fan, you sometimes blame the refs. And that's what Republicans are doing here, even when your team didn't perform up to par. And it's led to a whole bunch of stuff, some nonsense on the internet. Jill, we made light of this on the Instagram account. Some people saying that Kamala Harris's earrings were actually listening devices. They found these earrings that sort of look similar to Kamala Harris's earrings. They're not the same ones that have like little speakers in them. By the way, this accusation that she was wearing an earpiece, Trump allies made the same accusation against Hillary Clinton in 2016 and against Joe Biden in 2020 in debates where Trump didn't perform well. So it's sort of a tradition now that every 4 years when he doesn't perform well, he has some allies who are like, she was totally wearing an earpiece, because there's no way she was able to put together that performance. Accusations of wearing an earpiece or a radio go back decades. There was an accusation that George W. Bush was wearing a radio and his aides were telling him answers back in 2000. None of these confirmed.
Right, and it was just his shirt was like messy underneath his jacket.
His shirt was bunched up behind his jacket. They're like, he's wearing a radio transmitter and Karl Rove is telling him answers. They're like, stop it, everyone. Just stop it.
I believe that some internet sleuths did some digging and figured out that Kamala Harris was wearing a pair of $800 Tiffany earrings.
Yeah, we posted it. And then people were like, Moshe, can you put up the link to the Tiffany earrings? I really
like
them.
those.
I was like, not really our territory here at Mo News, but good luck finding them. By the way, she apparently wears these earrings relatively often. We found several photos of her wearing the same earrings. No earpiece, just a Tiffany's earring. Just some Tiffany's earrings there. As far as voter reaction here, There were some flash polls, including one done by CNN, that found that about 2/3 of people who watched last night, independents, Democrats, and a number of Republicans, found that Kamala Harris outperformed Donald Trump. The numbers from CNN were 63% to 37%. Voters also in that flash poll, and keep in mind with these flash polls, you tend to have higher margins of error, but they did find that voters were left with more positive impressions of Kamala Harris than they had pre-debate. One notable number among independents, her favorability rose to 48% after the debate from just 30% before. This is something we were talking about, Jill, was that about a third of voters said going into the debate they didn't know enough about her. We'll wait for some comprehensive numbers in the coming days here. Take this all with a grain of salt. The vast majority of those who tuned in still said, despite a more positive impression or who won the debate, that it'll have little effect on their decision. Just 4% said they changed their minds based on the debate on who they will vote for. But at the same time, we're telling you about how close this is. This entire election comes down to 7 states, and in those 7 states, maybe a couple dozen counties. And in those couple dozen counties, we're talking about tens of thousands of votes. And so 4% could make a difference given how close things are. In previous cycles, we look back at the data, and the winner of the debate, who people believe is the winner of the debate, typically gets about a 1% to 2% bounce off of that. But election day is still about 2 months away. So will that fizzle out? If she gets the traditional bounce, we shall see. You mentioned, the debate over the second debate. We'll see if that happens later this month. Will he, won't he? Will he, won't he? She wants another one. If I'm betting today, I think they have another one. I don't know. That's my feeling right now. That's my feeling. But we'll see if they can come to an agreement on it. But I feel like his people might want him to go out there again and do it. And maybe he comes in armed differently this time. We shall see. When it comes to people who lost that first debate, historically speaking, if you look at the past few elections, if you win that first debate, you're slightly more likely to win the election in November. But who lost the first debate in 2004? That was George W. Bush. He won re-election. In 2012, who lost the first debate? Barack Obama. He won re-election. And in 2016, Hillary Clinton beat Trump in the debates based on polling. She lost. Trump won in 2016. So Trump himself has been an underdog after losing the first debate and still went on to win in 2016. So the debate is not the be-all, end-all, but still interesting. I don't know that we'll be talking about it definitely not next month. I don't even know if we'll talk about it next week, depending on how this campaign cycle goes. And it's going to come down to what we're seeing in terms of voter turnout, voter registration, and places that you're going to remember from the last cycle, but we're going to remind you of: Cobb County, Georgia; Erie County, Pennsylvania; Maricopa County, Arizona.
Don't say it.
Maricopa.
I knew that was coming.
If you're watching cable news, you're going to see Steve Kornacki at the wall on MSNBC telling you all about Maricopa County. And that's ultimately what's going to matter much more than this debate.
And Moshe, after going their whole lives, literally, without ever meeting in person, Harris and Trump were actually face-to-face again on Wednesday, but in a very different setting. They commemorated the 23rd anniversary of the attacks on September 11th. Harris and Trump, along with President Biden and Trump's VP nominee, J.D. Vance, appeared to put politics aside, at least temporarily. They were all at Ground Zero in Manhattan for that commemoration event. Trump and Harris actually shook hands at the ceremony, ahead of the ceremony. It appeared that former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg facilitated the handshake.
Hey, you, shake hands.
You and you. Make nice. Vance and Harris did not appear to interact at all. For anyone who was watching or saw photos of the event, you basically had Mike Bloomberg sandwiched between Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on one side, and then Trump and Vance on the other. To his credit, Bloomberg, as the mayor of New York City, made the decision that there was going to be no political speeches or politics in general at these 9/11 ceremonies.
We should mention another former New York City mayor, Rudy Giuliani, was over on the Trump side, also participating in that commemoration. Jill, there was a reporter who happened to be close enough to actually hear what was said, and they believe they heard Trump say to Kamala Harris, "Good job." Clearly there potentially a reference to the debate the previous night, as a lot of people were asking, like, are you a good lip reader, Moshe? Can you figure out what Trump and Harris said to each other there? It sounds like somebody was within earshot and heard Trump say, good job. As far as politics, well, it's back to politics after the commemoration ceremonies throughout the day on 9/11. Harris is headed to Michigan, and it comes as she hits the trail, hoping to build off the momentum of the debate and the Taylor Swift endorsement, the support we told you about, the Instagram post that Taylor put out to her 200 million plus followers after the debate, just minutes after the debate on Tuesday night. The post on Instagram already, as of this recording, had more than 9 million likes. There's a Harris Waltz friendship bracelet selling for $20 on the Harris Waltz website. Looks like it's already sold out. Jill, you told me the friendship bracelet is a Taylor Swift thing.
Yes, finally there's something I know that Moshe doesn't know. He's like, wait, Jill, why did you write that? What is the connection?
Why is
I don't get it.
the friendship bracelet here? And you're like, Moshe, let me tell you about friendship bracelets and Taylor Swift. Anyway, when I was in the spin room on Tuesday night, we tried to ask Trump about Taylor Swift, and he clearly wasn't prepared to answer it. He was asked about it again on Fox and Friends, the morning show over there on Fox News on Wednesday, and he shook off the endorsement, so to speak, saying that he wasn't surprised. Take a listen.
But she's a very liberal person. She seems to always endorse a Democrat, and she'll probably pay a price for it at in the marketplace. But no, I like Brittany. I think Brittany's great. Brittany got a lot of news last week. She's a big MAGA fan. That's the one I like much better than Taylor Swift.
So he's talking there about Brittany Mahomes. She's the wife of Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes. Of course, Travis Kelce is also on the team. He's dating Taylor Swift. So when Taylor Swift attends games, she's in the box, often seen with Brittany Mahomes. Brittany Mahomes hasn't really given a full-throated endorsement to Trump, but she's liked some of his Instagram posts lately. That has been the subject of some controversy. So he's saying, the wife of the quarterback who likes my posts on Instagram, I like her much more than Taylor Swift. Translation.
And Mo, should I give my hot take on Taylor Swift's endorsement?
Jill? Tell me, and I have some data here that we can go into on what research is actually shown here. But first, let's go with your hot take, and then we'll look at some of the data.
It's a hot take, and I think it's probably going to be controversial, but maybe not. And I am the biggest Swiftie. I love Taylor Swift. I think everyone has a right, of course, to free speech. They can use their platform how they want. I appreciate that she's getting out the vote and encouraging people to register to vote. I think that's awesome to get more people to participate in democracy. But in general, my thoughts on celebrity endorsements are, who cares? I mean, they are so out of touch with, I think, regular Americans. If you're at the point where you're a celebrity whose endorsement matters, then you've made it. You probably have assistants that have their own assistants. You're probably not doing your food shopping. You probably have multiple houses. You're not worried about paying a mortgage or rent or student loans or any of these pocketbook issues per se. So I would say not that the last person you should be listening to is a celebrity, but they probably have very little in common with you in terms of issues that really affect your life, medical bills, things like that. So I don't know. I'd say do your own research when deciding who you want to vote for.
Well, credit to Taylor Swift. She did say that in her caption. So she said, I'm voting for Harris Waltz, but everyone should do their own research. I did mine. So after sort of making the case in 3 paragraphs for why she's voting the way she is, she did tell her followers, like, please do your research and vote the way you will, but please register to vote. In less than 24 hours after she put up the Instagram story with a link to vote.gov to register to vote, more than 300,000 people clicked on that link. So not insignificant there. And there is research by a group called the Beacon Center. They're a libertarian think tank, and they did research anecdotally in Tennessee, asking people in Tennessee, these are voters back in the spring, are you Taylor Swift fans? They found that about a third of registered voters in Tennessee are Taylor Swift fans. Within that group, 12% said that if Taylor Swift endorsed a candidate, it would make them more likely to vote for that candidate. Now, keep in mind, Tennessee is not a swing state, still very red, even with, native Taylor Swift from there. But it does show you, if 12% in that research of Taylor Swift fans say that I would take her endorsement into account, again, when we talk about this being an election of margins, she could have an impact here. And again, the more important thing is she's gotten, ideally here, several 100,000 people to register to vote. They still have to show up on election day or early vote, but registration is the first step.
And analysts already are talking about, will there be some type of Taylor Swift, Kamala Harris event? Of course, we were all waiting for Beyonce at the DNC. That never materialized. I mean, it could make a difference.
And those are events they could have where they get people to register on site, or they could be on early voting days in certain states. There's a whole strategy they can do there to get people to start to file their votes in early voting states, absentee registration, and utilize her in that way. We shall see. What I heard from people inside the Harris campaign is that they were surprised by the timing here of Taylor Swift. While she did endorse Biden in 2020, they don't find the endorsement itself surprising, but the timing of it caught some of them by surprise.
I guess she watched the debate with everybody else and was like, this is it. This is the time.
There you go.
Okay, time now for the speed read. Let's start with Francine from Fox Weather. Francine made landfall in Louisiana just before 6 p.m. Eastern time Wednesday as a Category 2 hurricane with 100-mile-per-hour winds. It moved onshore just southwest of New Orleans in the marshy territory of Terrebonne Parish. Life-threatening storm surge spread across coastal Louisiana, and conditions worsened throughout the afternoon and into the evening. Flooding, rainfall, storm surge, damaging winds, and tornadoes are all threats. Multiple parishes in Louisiana issued mandatory evacuation orders as the hurricane made landfall, again with widespread power outages, significant flooding, and some property damage. As of noon on Wednesday, officials told people staying behind to just lock down at home. What happens, though, when people do not evacuate when told to evacuate is that not only are they putting themselves at danger, but they're also really putting the first responders in danger.
But at the same time, it costs money. You got to find a place to stay. You got to pay for gas. And so for many folks, that's a lot of money, especially in these hurricane-prone areas where you have multiple storms. So some will make the decision that they're going to just ride it out. So they gave them the deadline saying, you're going to get out by Wednesday morning. Otherwise, you got to lock down. And keep your fingers crossed. And then you're going to just have to wait for first responders to get to you if you need them. So we're going to get a better sense later today with sunrise as to how much damage it did. In terms of strength, there were gusts up to 112 mile per hour out in oil platforms just southeast of the storm before it made landfall. The good thing about this is it's not going to sit like some of these storms and cause like massive amounts of rainfall, at least not in Louisiana. It's going to move north relatively quickly, but you could see some flooding rains across Tennessee, Kentucky, the Ohio Valley. Could be a major rain event as the wind dies down here. And this is the first storm that we've seen in nearly a month now since Ernesto. So, keeping fingers crossed that this will continue not to be the hurricane season that meteorologists were concerned about.
Now to the economy. This from Axios. The war on inflation has mostly been won, but there is an exception. Housing prices. According to the CPI data out on Wednesday, most analysts think that the Federal Reserve will still lower interest rates at its meeting next week. However, it is evidence that there is still at least one strong inflationary force in the economy, and that might be enough to quiet talk of an aggressive pace of rate cuts. The housing price pressure, especially if it continues, means that inflation data still warrants at least some attention, even as the Fed looks to have growing concern about the cooling job market. The bottom line here, analysts say that we'll still get a rate cut, maybe just not as big a rate cut.
Yeah, so when we talk about inflation here, we're talking about the consumer price index takes multiple prices into account. The price of rental cars, the price of goods and services, the price of homes. The translation here is they're going to lower interest rates because inflation is down in the 2% range again. Now, we're cooked from the last 4 years, right? Prices ain't going to go down unless we're in a recession or depression. They're just back to going up 2% like they were pre-pandemic. We're not in the 8%, 6% days anymore. But ultimately, all the prices increases that we saw are basically there for good. We're just back to prices increasing at a more normal rate. The concern with housing prices is as you lower interest rates, you basically unleash more money into the economy. And that means that people have more money to spend, which means you could see housing prices in this case go up even higher. And that's a concern here about not dropping interest rates significantly very quickly here, because they don't want to see an explosion in housing prices as people are able to now take loans out again with lower interest rates. So U.S. officials here, Fed officials, have a challenging task of navigating, like, don't let us get into recession, but also start to lower some interest rates because, the war on inflation is beaten. But don't lower them so much as to lead to an explosion in housing prices further. So there's a lot of levers here to pull in the economy, and that's what the Fed is working on here. During the 12 months through August, that data that Jill mentioned, consumer price index increased about 2.5%. That is the smallest increase in 3.5 years. Again, it's still increasing. It's just increasing at a much lower rate. And if you take housing prices out, you would see that inflation would be even lower. So housing prices still keeping stuff slightly elevated. And I know for many of you, that is a top concern and something we'll continue to monitor here.
Sticking with those higher prices from CNN, Amazon's taking a page out of Aldi and Target's playbook and launching a new line of budget-friendly food items in an attempt to attract price-conscious shoppers who are ditching name brands to save money. So Amazon's rolling out a new no frills private label. It's called Amazon Saver. Most items are priced at less than $5. That includes a bunch of household staples and pantry items like cookies and crackers, and even perishable items like sliced turkey and ham. More than 100 additional items will be revealed in the coming months. The company has several private label food brands, including Amazon Fresh, 365, and Happy Belly. But Amazon says that Saver will be the company's lowest priced brand, which they say complements the company's selection of private label brands designed to provide the best value for a range of grocery products.
So this is Amazon taking aim at Walmart, at Target, at Aldi. They all have cheaply priced private label brands that are popular with customers, especially, as we mentioned in the last story, in this age of inflation. It's led people to reevaluate their spending habits, go to the generics, especially in the grocery store. One analyst saying that Amazon still has big ambitions in grocery. When you look at the numbers nationally, Jill, Walmart, probably the biggest grocer in the country, depending on what metrics you look at. And then you have Amazon, which obviously owns Whole Foods, but also people buy online there. As of right now, they say they're going to be adding some more grocery discounts for Prime members. Now Prime is $139 a year, but with Prime subscription, you get 10% discount. But now you can get a 50% discount off of 8 to 15 grocery items that change every week. So you'll look up and see what are your 50% items every week, another way to get you into Prime.
Now to the Middle East and the latest on a possible ceasefire deal from Bloomberg. Israel has proposed giving Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar safe passage out of Gaza in exchange for the hostages it holds and giving up control of the Gaza Strip. This is according to a senior official, even as doubts deepen about the two sides' ability to reach any ceasefire agreement. Israeli hostage envoy Gal Hirsch said in an interview with Bloomberg, quote, "I am ready to provide safe passage to Sinwar, his family, whoever wants to join him. We want the hostages back. We want demilitarization, de-radicalization, of course, a new system that will manage Gaza." Hirsch said he put the offer of safe passage on the table a day and a half ago and declined to characterize the response so far. He reiterated Israel would also be willing to release prisoners it holds as part of any deal.
So this is part of an effort here to try to finally get a deal after months of negotiations. They're trying to get creative here. The clock is ticking, according to some of the negotiators here. They say the hostages don't have much time. It's believed that more than 100 are still being held. About 75 of them are believed to still be alive. And the belief is Hamas is holding about 30 bodies as well. Basically, the goal here is, how do you get Sinwar out of Gaza? How do you get Hamas out of Gaza? There is a precedent here for this. This is effectively what the Israelis did with the Palestinian Liberation Organization back in Lebanon in the early 1980s, is they allowed for safe passage of then leader Yasser Arafat and his leadership to leave Beirut, go to Tunisia at the time. Now, they would eventually negotiate with them, sign a peace deal with them. A decade later, they come back as a Palestinian Authority. That's the PA that currently controls the West Bank as a competitor to Hamas. But effectively, they allowed the PLO leadership to leave Beirut safely as part of a plan to end that war at the time between the PLO and Israel in Lebanon. The idea here is that Hamas gets some safe passage. Will Sinwar take this deal? Unclear. Will Israel promise not to kill Sinwar wherever he ends up going? Unclear. They just killed the last Hamas leader, Hania, who we've talked about in Tehran. Now, they haven't taken responsibility, but everyone basically knows it was them. Do they make that commitment? And even if they make the commitment, do they stand by that commitment? Because they have said they're going to take out everyone who was responsible for October 7th. Sinwar was the mastermind behind it. So we'll see if this somehow jumpstarts negotiations. And then who, of course, will make a home or a place to live for Sinwar if he is given safe passage out of Gaza?
I guess Iran.
Well, I think Sinwar would want some assurances that Iran can give him a safer spot than the last guy who ran Hamas.
Just not in that guest house room.
There's been talk of Algeria. There is talk of Iraq. There's a lot, but then there's a bunch of countries that are like, I don't want the head of Hamas in my country. Like, it's not a good experience. Of course, there's also Qatar, Doha, where there's a bunch of Hamas leaders as well. But I think, they've had it up to a certain point with Hamas leadership. I don't know if they're going to take this guy on. So that's one of the challenges, is even if he accepts it, is where does he go?
From NBC News, the FDA announced that it's begun a research project examining the possible effects of toxic metals in tampons, and that it's launching an independent review. A study published in July found a variety of metals, including arsenic, mercury, and lead in more than a dozen brands of tampons. The co-author saying that although toxic metals are ubiquitous and we are exposed to low levels at any given time, our study clearly shows that metals are also present in menstrual products and that women might be at higher risk for exposure using these products. While the study detected metals, it couldn't conclude whether their existence led to any harm in the women.
For those asking, how do the metals get in there? There's a couple ways they do. Tampons are made with cotton, rayon, or a combination. The metals could have come from the soil through the plants used to make those products. And then the presence of metals could also be linked to the chemicals used in tampons as antimicrobials or to control odor. The FDA says its lab study will measure how much of the metals may be leached into tampons while they're still inside women's bodies. And so this is some important research. They haven't given a timeline when they'll release their findings here. But the FDA says that this research ideally will allow them to complete a risk assessment of metals and talk about the extent of metal exposure and get a better sense of that data.
I promise not to make you say tampons again for the rest of the week.
Listen, it's a serious news story. We're here to talk about all subjects, but Joe, I'm game. I'm game.
I'm just obviously a child.
You're like, I made Moj do a tampon story. All right, now time for On This Day in History. We begin with my favorite explorer, Jill. On this day in 1609, 415 years ago today, Henry Hudson, the English explorer, sailed down what is now known as the Hudson River. Henry Hudson was looking for a route to Japan. He kept trying. The first time he hits the east coast of the U.S., the next time he moves up slightly, he heads up this river in what is now New York. He calls it the Hudson River. It turns out that the Hudson River does not get you to Japan. He had to turn around. He then goes back to England. He's like, I'm going to try again. And they're like, all right, Henry. Tries again and again. He keeps going north, 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 north. He also got his name on a bay, a certain bay up there in Canada, Hudson Bay. That was the last opportunity Henry Hudson was given to find Japan, because once they get to Hudson Bay, people who are familiar with the geography, our Canadian listeners know, that doesn't get you to Japan. And so then they put Henry and his son on a small boat and said, get out of here. And they were never seen again. His ship returns to England without him and his son. They're like, where's Henry? They're like, we're really angry at him. And we left him floating in the bay.
Wait, so why is he your favorite explorer?
Because I like that he just tried and tried again. And listen, we could go into Magellan and elements I like about Magellan and Amerigo Vespucci and Da Gama. It's a whole separate podcast we could do at some point. But I like that Henry was like, I'm going to find Japan and I will keep going, to the point where he's so upset his crew. They're like, Henry, we appreciate your persistence, but now, we've wasted years of our life trying to find Japan.
We like it here. We want to stay. Can you please just stop?
So I appreciate him for his persistence.
All right, I buy it.
And now you can buy a ceiling fan with his name on it. All right, Fast forward to our clue today. On this day in 1953, 71 years ago today, a senator by the name of John F. Kennedy marries Jacqueline Bouvier in Newport, Rhode Island. He was a 36-year-old first-term senator. She was a 24-year-old aspiring journalist. They had met the previous year. You can actually go in Georgetown on a tour, effectively, of the places that they met. They dated, and then they would get married in 53. 7 years later, they would become the youngest president and first lady in American history. Their Catholic mass for their wedding was attended by 750 guests, and then an additional 450 people joined for the party. A 1,200-person wedding, Jill. Seems overwhelming.
I doubt they were able to say hello to everybody.
I appreciated when I got married a few years ago. It was a COVID wedding. We had 70 people, and I thought that was a great number. All right, we stick in the 1950s here. The Soviet Union on this day launches Luna 2, the first space probe to hit the moon. A reminder here, before the U.S. puts astronauts on the moon in 69, the Soviets basically did everything in space first. The first animal, the first man, the first woman, the first satellite, the first unmanned trip to the moon. It was finally in 69, this is the space race, that the U.S. finally beats the Soviets to something. All right, on this day in 1984, a certain basketball player that we grew up loving in Chicago and the world came to know, Michael Jordan, signs a contract with the Chicago Bulls, a 7-year contract to play basketball for the Bulls. We're very lucky in Chicago because Portland Trail Blazers, for draft pick number 2 that year, take Sam Bowie. The Bulls, with pick number 3, take a young guy out of North Carolina named Michael Jordan. And I think it worked out for Chicago.
And for Nike.
And now he's a billionaire, too, mainly off his purchase and the sale of the Charlotte franchise. All right, we end here, as usual, with music on this day in 1966. The sitcom The Monkees, featuring a fictional pop rock group fashioned after the Beatles, debuts on TV. It lasts 2 seasons, but the fictional group of the TV show The Monkees actually has a few legit hits, like I'm a Believer, and Hey, it's the Monkees. They have a few hits, even though they were sort of a faux group created for the TV show purposes.
I had no idea that was the case. I thought that they were a real group. Because I knew those songs. I didn't realize that they were a fake group for a TV show.
You learn something new every day here on the Mo News podcast. We fast forward to 1998. One of the best albums of all time, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, debuts at number 1 in the U.S.
She, by the way, just randomly canceled her tour. She didn't really give a reason. She was supposed to go on tour. She was supposed to play here on Long Island at Jones Beach Theater, and then just canceled.
There's been a few artists who've been canceling lately in terms of they've had some ticket sales issues, etc. We will look into this further here on the Mo News podcast. And finally, on this day in 2006, Justin Timberlake releases his second solo album, Future Sex, Love Sounds. Lead single is Sexy Back. It helps to go to number 1 in the U.S., sells millions of copies.
Timberlake, by the way, expected to plead guilty in his drunk driving case in Sag Harbor on
Jill Wagner here, everyone, with the Long Island angle for every single item here on this day in history. We got
Lauryn Hill canceled it at Jones Beach. Justin Timberlake's pleading guilty in Sag Harbor.
We're gonna go through the song and we're like, Jill, what's the Long Island angle on this one?
Mosh, I've got my finger on the pulse of Long Island. What can I say?
It's 2.5 million people. That's not easy, Jill.
Well, you left us, Mosh. We had you for about 3 weeks. You and Alex, yes, and Olivia.
I'm back here in New York City, but we'll head out. We'll come visit.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Mo News podcast. Also, by the way, thank you for everyone who wrote me the kindest messages about September 11th, and I had shared that it was a tough day for us, and we were thinking of my husband's very good friend Brooke. Alexandra Jackman. And I have to say, I moved really beyond words by some of your messages. So thank you for that.
All right, everyone. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a good Friday Eve.